Hey, welcome back to my kitchen. My name is Shanae and today we're going to talk about tempering chocolate. A few years ago, I was making my chocolate dipped Oreo truffles and I was having the hardest time with the chocolate. What I did is I simply melted the chocolate and dipped my truffles in. As I waited and waited, the chocolate never hardened. And what I did is I simply put it in the freezer for half an hour or so, and chocolate of course hardened, and as I was transferring it onto a serving platter, the chocolate softened, leaving fingerprints all over them. Have you had that happen to you? Well, as it turns out, the problem was that I wasn't tempering my chocolate. Tempered chocolate sets quickly, usually within 5 minutes at room temperature, and also has a nice shiny finish. It snaps when it's broken, has a solid, dense structure. It also has a higher melting point, which means it doesn't melt easily when touched and doesn't leave any fingerprints. This is why it's so important to properly temper chocolate, especially when you're making it for dipping strawberries or truffles or making chocolate candy. So in this video, I'm going to share with you science behind the tempering process. Nothing too scientific, but once I understood the process, it clicked for me, and I really hope it will do the same for you too. Then I will demonstrate for you how to properly temper chocolate. It's an important skill to master, especially if you work a lot with chocolate. It's important because it's so easy to overheat the chocolate and break the temper, and you don't want to waste the chocolate, especially if you're working with high quality chocolate. The tempering process is so easy once you understand the science behind it. During the tempering process, I'm going to share with you 2 important tips that no one mentions, and I learned it the hard way. So make sure to watch the video carefully. And finally, I'm going to share with you how to melt chocolate without breaking its temper. This is my favorite go-to method when I need tempered chocolate for dipping. Okay, so let's talk about the science behind tempering chocolate. You see, chocolate is a very complex thing. One of the main components of the chocolate is cocoa butter, which makes the chocolate super unique. When we melt chocolate, cocoa butter melts, dissolving all the fat crystals in it and making the chocolate liquid. And when we cool the melted chocolate, the cocoa butter starts to solidify and fat crystals form. And the interesting thing is that fat molecules start to form into one of 6 structures, depending on how long the chocolate has been held at certain temperature and how much it was stirred. These fat crystal structures are also called phases or forms 1 through 6, and each structure has different melting points. And if we don't control the temperature of the melted chocolate and just let it cool on its own, then the fat crystals can take any of the forms that it would like, and that's how the chocolate becomes super soft, doesn't have nice snap, it has a dull finish, and they have very low melting point, which melts on your hand or leaves fingerprints and whatnot. So this is why we control the temperature of the melted chocolate when we are cooling it down. So we want our fat crystals in the cocoa butter form into phase 5 fat crystal structures, also called beta crystals. And when the chocolate forms beta crystals, it has all the characteristics we want: shiny finish, nice snap when we break it, and sets really quick and easy. It doesn't melt on your hands. And in order to ensure the melted chocolate forms these beta crystals, we need to control and create that ideal environment for those beta crystals to form. So how do we do that? Let me show you how to temper chocolate now, and I'll explain everything in the process. Start with a good quality chocolate. I like to use couverture chocolates from Valrhona and Calibo, but you can also use baking chocolate bars from any supermarket. Ghirardelli is my favorite go-to chocolate bar from the store. This tempering process only applies to real chocolate. So what is real chocolate? Real chocolate is the chocolate that contains cocoa butter. So melting chocolate, like compound chocolates, they don't have cocoa butter. They're made with vegetable shortening, vegetable oil, whatnot. So they're not real chocolate, and this tempering process do not apply to them. So use high quality chocolate. The reason I like couverture chocolates from Valrhona or Calibo is because they have higher cocoa butter percentage, and that affects the fluidity of the chocolate at the tempered state. Also, you can temper any kind of chocolate. Today I'm going to temper dark chocolate, but you can also use white chocolate or milk chocolate. They will have a little bit different melting points, temperatures that we are going to be talking about in a little bit, but you can go check out my blog post on more details about specific temperature for specific type of chocolate. So if you're using chocolate bar, make sure to chop them up really nice and fine so that it's easy to melt. And take 60% of chocolate in a larger bowl and separate 40% of the chocolate in a smaller bowl. And one important tool that we need is a thermometer, because we do need to control the temperature of the chocolate precisely to encourage the growth of beta crystals. So I have very little water here just come to a boil, and this is an interesting thing that I'm gonna do. It will look crazy, but I like to put this cloth here. Here's the tip number one that nobody mentions, is that you want to use appropriate size bowl for the amount of sugar. Don't use too big of a bowl for the chocolate, because otherwise oversized bowls can affect the temperature of your chocolate. Be very careful not to let any steam or water get into your chocolate, because one of the enemies for the chocolate is water or steam. They can seize your chocolate immediately and it will not be fixable. So I have very hot water here, and because my bowl is a little bit small, I lined it with a cloth, and I don't want my bowl touch the hot water at all. And we're going to gently melt the chocolate with the steaming water, and then we'll put our thermometer in, because we're going to melt our chocolate up to about 113, 120 degrees Fahrenheit, at which temperature the chocolate melts and all the fat crystals in the chocolate dissolves. I said two things are greatest enemy for chocolate. One is water, and the other one is burning the chocolate. Once you burn the chocolate, they will seize up and it will be unusable. So you will have to start over again. So this is very, very important to melt the chocolate gently. And notice that I'm not even using a stove, because I'm using such a small amount of chocolate. It will be really easy to melt. Make sure to stir it so that the heat distributes evenly. And if you have a lot of chocolate, definitely do it over very, very low heat. Again, we don't want any boiling water or anything on the bottom. This process of melting chocolate usually takes about 3 minutes. Again, it depends on how much chocolate you have. Yeah, you don't want to rush this process. Just go slow and easy. It shows 107 degrees right now. We're almost there. And I pretty much don't see any more chocolate. Reached 116 degrees, and I'm going to carefully take it off the heat and wipe the bowl. Take this off. So at this stage, when the chocolate is completely melted at 120 degrees, there's no fat crystals. And now we're going to add a little bit of the solid chocolate and then quickly stir the chocolate to cool that melted chocolate. And one of the most important things is to stir the chocolate continuously. So this tempering method is called seeding method, because we're using this unmelted chocolate as a seed for beta crystals. So whenever we buy chocolate from the store, they are tempered chocolate. They have beta crystals in them. So when we add them into a melted chocolate, what is happening is that we're distributing the beta crystals from the unmelted chocolate into the melted chocolate, and by agitation we are spreading that beta crystals everywhere and promoting the growth of beta crystals. So without the seed chocolate, it will be really, really hard to grow beta crystals from nothing. It is possible, but it will take hours for you to keep the chocolate in the same temperature for a long enough time to grow the beta crystals. So basically, the seeding method helps to expedite that growth of beta crystals. So I'm going to keep adding the whole chocolate, and as soon as it melts completely, you add the next batch of chocolate until it's melted. And we're cooling the chocolate until about 80, 82 degrees. At that temperature, the beta crystals are encouraged to grow more and more. And then we'll continue mixing. And when we drop the temperature of the chocolate to 82 degrees, we're not only encouraging the growth of beta crystals, we are also promoting the growth of form 4 crystals. So at 82 degrees, we'll have two types of fat crystal structures in our chocolate. That's why we're going to heat the chocolate to 90 degrees to dissolve all form 4 fat crystals. So my chocolate has reached 82 degrees, and like I said earlier, at this point, we encouraged beta 5 crystals along with form 4 crystals as well. And now we're going to put it over steaming water again, just for a few seconds to bring the temperature up to 90 degrees. And literally this will take about a few seconds. So my chocolate is at 90 degrees. Should be perfect now. To check the tempered chocolate, take a little piece of parchment paper, dip your chocolate in, and let it set at room temperature. It's very important to test it at room temperature. Don't put it in a fridge. If it's properly tempered, it should set within 3 to 5 minutes, depending on the temperature in your room. This leads me to tip number 2 that no one mentions when it comes to tempering chocolate is the room temperature you're working at. I find 68 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit is perfect temperature. If anything warmer than 75, your chocolate test won't work. It will be too hot. It's really hard to cool down your chocolate and whatnot. I learned it personally hard way. I actually filming this video second time because the first time it was very hot day and I couldn't run the AC in my studio here, and it was really hot, like 80 degrees in here. And when I tried to temper the chocolate, I couldn't test it. The temperature wouldn't come down, so I had a lot of trouble. So I'm filming it on a colder day, made sure not to run the heater. Yeah, it's very important. I learned it the hard way. This is my tempered chocolate, how fluid it is. Again, I'm using Valrhona chocolate, which has a higher cocoa butter content. And if you notice your tempered chocolate is much too thick, it's most likely because of the low cocoa butter content. In that case, if you need thinner chocolate for making candies, for example, you might need to add additional cocoa butter into it. And if you need to keep your chocolate in temper longer period of time, just monitor the temperature of your chocolate, and as soon as it starts dipping below 88 degrees, go ahead and put it on steaming water for a few seconds, bring it up to 92 degrees, and keep on working. And by the way, you can melt and temper chocolate as many times as you need to. You can just simply pour it over the parchment paper or silicone mat, let it set. Let's check this chocolate on the parchment paper. It looks like my chocolate has set properly. It has a nice sheen and peels off the parchment paper really easily. And let's see the snap test. Snaps good. So once the tempered chocolate sets, they usually pull the parchment paper up like this. And when you lift it, the parchment paper is super nice and clean. There's no fat residue at all. And look how it breaks with a snap. And you just break it apart and store it in bags. So to summarize, the tempering process is all about temperature, agitation, and time. We're controlling and holding the right temperature of melted chocolate and promoting the growth of beta crystals through seeding and agitation. So you don't have to go through this tempering process every time you need tempered chocolate. I'm going to share with you my go-to method for preparing chocolate for dipping. I don't like to call this a tempering process because we're not technically tempering a chocolate. We're simply melting the chocolate really gently without breaking its temper. So as I mentioned earlier, all the chocolate we buy from the store, they are already tempered. If we don't raise the chocolate temperature over 90 degrees, we won't break the temper. So how do we do that? We're going to use microwave to melt the chocolate, and because we can play with the settings, we can ensure the chocolate melts really gently. And for this method, I highly recommend using plastic or silicone bowl because ceramic or glass bowls retain the heat and then they can overheat the chocolate easily. So it's really important to use plastic or silicone bowl. I like to use the silicone mixing bowl, and I'm going to add my chocolate into the bowl, and then I'm going to microwave it for 30 seconds at 50% power. I'm using regular domestic microwave, which has a 1000 watt power. So if your microwave is 1200 or higher, make sure to adjust the power accordingly. If you have a 1200 watt microwave, make sure to use 40% power or something like that. So I'm going to put it in a microwave for 30 seconds at 50% power. So it may not look like it had done anything, but trust me, it's heating up very gently. Just give it a good stir and put it back for another 15 seconds, again at 50% power. Okay, it start heating up. Mix it, mix it, mix it. You see how it's starting to melt? We cannot rush this process, okay? So I'm going to pop it back in the microwave for another 15 seconds at 50% power. It's getting there. So now we need to make sure to mix it really good. I'm not going to put it back into the microwave until I mix it for at least a minute. So my chocolate hasn't melted yet. I'm going to pop it in a microwave for 10 seconds at 50% power. I actually did it for just 5 seconds. And look how the texture changed. Looking good. So my chocolate has set, has a beautiful sheen, as you can see, and lifts from the paper really easily. Look at that. Breaks perfectly, nice and sharp. When it's not properly tempered, they kind of tear, they don't snap. To make fun decorations, I'm going to transfer the chocolate into a piping bag. And I have Wilton 7 tip, and you can create really fun designs like so, and let it set before using for decorations. You can make so many fun things with tempered chocolate, like various chocolate decorations, make chocolate candies, and dip truffles and strawberries. And be sure to check out these videos for making chocolate cage for cake decoration and chocolate cups filled with dulce de leche. They're such an easy, delicious recipes. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye!